How different would it look on his monitor if this was over? Like just looking at a slide. Because what's happening now is the way the boom mic is, it is in my way of my notes.
Okay.
Because generally the boom mics, they're straight on, right?
I'm thinking because the sun's going down this way and it's going to be down, so what about this way instead?
That way we're just on his coordinates.
Yeah, let's do it.
I don't know if his coordinates is going to allow that.
Well, let's just move everything over like a couple feet. You know what? Originally, the podium was there, and I
was it?
suggested to bring it here.
Oh,
But we can do whatever we want. Like, just with the way the
yeah, just with the way the boom mic is.
podium is and everything.
It's kind of blocking my nose. So if it was straight on instead, it might be a little easier. Move it over. So now with this
On that side, this side,
this is straight on.
straight on. Can I adjust it for you? Is that perfect? Yes, sir. So this way?
Either way, if the sun's clear, let's try it there and let's see what feed he gets.
Yeah, Harley, what do you think now? We changed things.
Yeah. Put a chair right here, so just until it starts. So no one's yeah, don't want anybody to like. Oh, sorry. No, but until it starts, because some pick the.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, just take the young brother went.
I saw it, yeah. Is it in the right spot now?
Yeah, he just checked again. Maybe once it stops. Maybe once it stops.
Pull the chair through.
Well, that plus, I don't know if you want to just maybe go into one of the rooms, call your mom, or follow up, so just ask them how it's coming.
I can text them. I don't want to miss it.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Because I mean, if it's not working, I'm not going to be able to do much.
That's true.
I think he can tell if it's not working. No, he can tell.
He said they're seeing a screen counting down to 4 o'clock.
Check the sound in the back while you do that.
You can have your attention. Oh, okay. We wanted to get your attention, asking if you could just start making your way to your seats so we can see if there are enough chairs or if more need to be brought in. And another announcement, if you are able to, if you can please shut off your Wi-Fi connection, as our live stream is being done through the Wi-Fi and we just don't want it to get bogged down. So if you don't mind just turning off the Wi-Fi on your cell phones or any other electronic devices, that would be appreciated. Thank you. On behalf of the Lichty family, we would like to thank all of you who could be present here this afternoon. Not only do we have those here present with us in the auditorium, but we have the program streaming live through YouTube. So we welcome those who have been able to tie in through that live stream. Why have we come here today? Well, we've come here to remember our dear friend, our son, our brother, our uncle, our cousin. For some of you, a very close friend, Danny Aaron Lichty. Now, as we got to know Danny, we saw him to be a kind, loving person. I'm sure you all would agree. Danny was born January 21st, 1975 in Guelph, Ontario. And his parents recall bringing him home or having him at the hospital. He was less than 4 pounds. And for those of you who knew Danny, Danny was a giant. And so it's hard to imagine that his start was only less than 4 pounds. Survived immigration laws, she was not able to be here with us. So we think especially of Kendra being so far away. He's also survived by his youngest brother Simon and his sister-in-law Mercedes. In addition to that, Danny had many aunts and uncles and so many cousins. We think of all of you here in the audience and those tied in through the live stream. All of you can perhaps think of something that made Danny a person to you. We'll take a few moments and just think of a few things that made Danny, Danny. From his mom, one of the things that she was especially fond of was Danny would take time, even in his busy schedule, to schedule a lunch with his mom and dad. And his mom relates that whenever he was with them, he felt safe and cherished in their company. His dad, Larry, remembered many fond moments with his son. Larry mentioned to me that on occasion when they went fishing together, either as a family, or just the two of them, those were the best of times. And there's just one thing that touched Larry, his dad's heart. On one occasion when they were out for lunch, Danny took a photo, or what we would today call a selfie. It was of his dad and himself. Danny then looked at his dad and he says, "Dad, this photo is going to be on my phone. So every time I make a call, I think of you." Imagine how that made his dad feel. It made him feel wanted, and it made him feel secure. There are countless other things that we could say about Danny. All of a sudden, they couldn't find Danny anymore. One day, where is he? So they would backtrack, and there they would find Danny, stooped down low, sometimes down on his hands and knees, looking at the smallest of God's creation. That was something that impressed him, and that's the man Danny grew up to hard. That goes along with this gift from mom and dad. Why don't we both sign it? Incredible amount of love that he showed. His sister-in-law, Deanne, recalls that as they raised their family, their young family, at times people may have been critical of the job that Deanne was doing in raising the kids. Danny would come to her rescue, and he would look at her, he would hold her and says, "You know, Deanne, you are a great mom." So this is the type of person that Danny was. Someone that you felt drawn to. Someone whose company that you would no doubt want to keep. Danny had a spiritual side to him. He was raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses by his parents. And his brother mentioned to me that always in his vehicles, Danny would have either the Watchtower tapes, CDs, or downloads that he would have on the stereo in his car. So he was a spiritual man. His humor was unique. And for many of you who knew him, at times Danny would tell a joke, and the joke would either go right over your head, or you would stand there a bit stunned, and then you would be like, "Oh, okay, now I see what you're saying." And that was the type of person
Danny was. His sister Kendra recalls that when, as a family, they took long and arduous road trips, Danny would conjure up in his mind games that they could play as a family or as the children to allow the time to pass by. What does that tell us about him? He always had the interest ahead of his own. But we are here because Danny is no longer with us. And so this is a time of sorrow for us, a time to cry, a time to shed a tear. There's nothing wrong with that. We need comfort in this time of loss. It's of great loss, as I'm sure you all agree from what we just read of Danny's history. You know, even Jesus, God's only Son, a perfect man, showed fellow feeling. And he showed what you and I are showing even today with the loss of our dear friend Danny. Jesus had a very close friend. And when that friend passed away, Jesus, God's own Son, who was perfect and had the ability to resurrect that individual, notice his reaction when he suffered that loss. We can turn in our Bibles, if you have yours or on your electronic devices, to John chapter 10, or John chapter 11, rather. And we will look at verses 33 through 35. Jesus saw Lazarus' sister. The psalmist described our Creator in 34th Psalm and verse 18. Psalm 34 and verse 18. And as we read through this, let us see why it is that Danny was the way he was. So in 34 and verse 18 we read, Jehovah, referring to the Creator, is close to the brokenhearted. Are there a few brokenhearted in this audience and tied in with us through the streaming? Certainly there is. It says he saves those who are crushed in spirit. Are your spirits crushed? Yes, because we've lost a dear friend and brother and died. Why don't we have Danny with us anymore? Well, we have to go back to the very beginning of man's history. You probably recall Adam and Eve, or first parents in the Garden of Eden. Now, when God first put them there, the account tells us that God breathed life into a form he had made out of the dust, and he created Adam to become a living soul. God then went on to tell them that they were to have children, multiply, fill the earth, fill this beautiful paradise that he had given them. He did, however, have a restriction for them, and that was that they could enjoy from all the trees in the garden except one. And the reason God did that was that he wanted to test their obedience to him. Well, the way it turned out was they chose not to obey God's law. And God had, and in Romans chapter 5 and verse 12, let us notice what answer they gave. So Romans chapter 5 and in verse 12 we read, that is why, just as through one man sin entered into the world, and death through sin, and so death spread to all men because they had all sinned. So you notice the connection between what Adam and Eve did in the Garden of Eden and you and I today? Because of their sin, they brought on sin, imperfection, and as a result, death to you and I. And you know, it can be illustrated this way. For those of you in the audience who bake or work in a place that they use molds, if your baking pan or mold has a dent in it, what happens to anything made in that pan or that mold? It comes out of that indentation, that defect. And so it is with what Adam and Eve did that caused a dent, a blemish, imperfection in you and I. And when we look around us here in the audience, those tied in with us, or just in the world around us, we see a lot of imperfection. Imperfection has caused us to have illness, and it has caused us to have emotional anguish that sometimes we have no control over. Was that the case with Danny? Yes, Danny was imperfect. And Danny suffered from emotional illness that sometimes got the better of him. And you no doubt agree that sometimes that's the way you and I feel. Or emotional anguish, or perhaps a debilitating physical illness gets us down. And sometimes we cry out for relief. Sometimes we just want to be done with it. But clearly we see why those things happen. Is this something that will continue indefinitely? Will we have to struggle indefinitely with imperfection, with emotional anguish like Daddy faced? Well, our Creator, our loving Creator, tells us otherwise. He promises a time when illness, suffering, emotional pain, all these things will be gone. Would you like to see His promise to us? Turn with me, if you're able, to Revelation. That's the very last book of the Bible. And let us notice what we are told there. Revelation chapter 21 and verse 4. Notice how comforting that verse is. It says, and He, referring to Jehovah God, our Creator, will wipe out every tear from their eyes, and death will be no more. Neither will mourning, nor outcry, nor pain be anymore. The former things have passed away. Imagine living in a time where you would never wake up saying, oh, my back hurts. Oh, I don't need these glasses. Or, for someone with a debilitating illness like cancer, gone. All those things gone for good. It clearly tells us that pain, suffering, all such things, outcry, will be no more. What a wonderful prospect you and I have when that is fulfilled. Interestingly, we mentioned Danny, and sometimes the jokes he would tell, the humor that he would have, we would get it, other times we wouldn't. Danny had a spin on this text, and you know what that was? Danny was not a morning person. He hated mornings. And so he said, oh, I can't wait for the time when there will be no more morning. That was the type of humor Danny had. We rejoice in the fact that these conditions are soon to come about. But perhaps you might be wondering, is Danny suffering? Like what state is Danny in right now? He had his struggles that he faced, just like you and I. What is the condition of Danny? What is the condition of the Danny? Well, the Bible tells us in Ezekiel chapter 18 and verse 4 that the soul that is sinning, it itself will die. And if we recall when we first talked about our first parents with Adam, God took dust from the ground, He formed it into a form like Adam and breathed life into it. When Adam sinned, he died. And the scriptures clearly said, from dust you are, and to dust you will return. So that's where Danny is. Danny is dead, and he is in our Creator's, in Jehovah God's memory. Hear how this is expressed in Ecclesiastes chapter 9 and verse 5. So in Ecclesiastes chapter 9 and verse 5, notice what that verse says.
For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing at all. Nor do they have any more reward, because all memory of them is forgotten. Now, when it makes mention of reward and memory of them, it is not to say that that person has never existed. No, that's certainly not the case. It just of the teachings of the Bible. That resurrection is made possible by God's Son, who himself died and gave his life as a ransom for you and I. What will Jesus accomplish for them? What will Jesus accomplish for you and I? Well, Jesus, in his life and ministry on earth, proved that with God's Spirit, he was able to bring people back from the dead. His dear friend Lazarus, he actually raised Lazarus again. And the scriptures tell us that he will do so even on a much grander scale in the future. Let's take a look at John chapter 5 and verses 28 and 29. Let's see what God's words to us are in that text. So John 5, 28 and 29. Here we are told, do not be amazed at this, for the hour is coming in which all those in the memorial tombs will hear his voice, and they will come out. Those who did good things to a resurrection of life, and those who practiced vile things to a resurrection of judgment. Yes, our Creator has given his Son Christ Jesus the power that at his call, those who have passed away in death will come back to life. We think of how God initially gave that breath of life to Adam. Well, this resurrection will be similar, where the person will come back to life. And what a wonderful time that will be, to see our dead loved ones again. Jehovah is going to be able to accomplish that by a means of an arrangement that he has set in place. The Bible, right throughout, right from Genesis, right through to Revelation, has a key theme that runs through, and that is God's kingdom. Well, what is the kingdom? The kingdom is the means by which God will change some of the very disturbing things that we see going on in the world around us. And one thing that it will do an end to is death. The Bible refers to enemy as, or to death as an enemy. Why? Because when God first put our parents Adam and Eve here on earth, his intention was not for them to die. He wanted them to live on and on, to fill the earth, multiply, fill the earth, and expand paradise to the far-flung corners of the earth. So by means of this arrangement, this kingdom, now when we think of kingdom, it's not a term that we use much today, but it's a government. And the government of Canada is an autocracy, but yet still it oversees all of Canada. And so it is with God's kingdom. From a study of the Bible, we are taught that God's kingdom is a heavenly kingdom, which will bring about the change that you and I so readily need. How can you and I benefit from being here this afternoon, or tied in to the live stream? Well, being at a funeral reminds us of the gravity or the uncertainty of life. You know, 5 weeks ago, Danny was here with us, and now he's gone. So that's how uncertain life is. You and I, our life could be ended tomorrow. So being here today helps us to see how uncertain life is. And if you would, in our Bibles, in Ecclesiastes chapter 9 and verse 11, let us notice what it says about that very thing. So Ecclesiastes chapter 9 and verse 11. And if we look at the ending part of that verse, we notice that it says, because time and unexpected events overtake them all. So yes, life is uncertain. It seems that if you have a lot of money, then that kind of spells out your future. And that might be true to a certain degree. But when we think of the uncertainty of life, our material possessions, money cannot really help us. And so Jesus' counsel, rather than storing up treasures on earth, as in the way of material possessions, he asked us to store up treasures in heaven. Why? Because this relationship that we could have with our Creator, neither death or anything we face in this life can really interfere with that. And Danny had an opportunity to have a relationship with his Creator. By our zealous works and fine conduct, we can help in the sanctification of God's name. There's a lot of reproach, there's a lot of things that have been said bad about God. Things such as, he took Danny's life, or he causes wicked things to happen. Well, when we examine our relationship with our God, we help to prove those things false. In the book of Proverbs, chapter 27 and verse 11, notice what it says that you and I can do. Proverbs chapter 27 and verse 11, there we are told, be wise, my son, and make my heart rejoice, so that I can make a reply to him who taunts me. So remember, we just mentioned some of the false things that have been said about God. In addition to that, he served at the headquarters for Jehovah's Witnesses in Canada, which is in Halton Hills, Ontario. What assignment did Danny have there? He was cleaning. Interestingly enough, Danny and his cousin back in Ontario had a cleaning business together. Danny hated cleaning, and he would express that. But he did it because he realized that he needed to make a living. But when he was volunteering at the headquarters here in Canada, his assignment was to clean. But he looked at that assignment totally different, because that was not an assignment to make money, to make ends meet. There, he was working on a spiritual level, trying to bring praise to his great God Jehovah. We can be certain that the pain and the anguish that you and I face today and in the days to come because of the uncertainty of life will not go on indefinitely. The Bible and our Creator gives us a sure hope that these things will not continue indefinitely. What can you and I do then? We made the sacrifice to be here today to remember our dear friend and brother Danny. And that's good. The scriptures actually encourage that. Let's look at 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 11. 1 Thessalonians 5 and 11. And notice what it says. Therefore, keep encouraging one another and building one another up, just as you are in fact doing. And as mentioned before, the Lichty family is thrilled. They are so thankful that so many of you could be present, so many of you could be tied in by the live feed to express your heartfelt sympathy for the loss that they have suffered. As fellow believers, we can remind each other of that sure hope and provide emotional support. We prayerfully look to our Father and our Creator, our loving God, to bring an end to the suffering that we see. Yes, to bring an end to things like death, the enemy death, to put it aside forever. In our concluding text, let us notice how that relief can be had. So in Psalms The 9th Psalm. The 9th Psalm, verses 9 and 10. Notice the words, the heartfelt words of our Creator. Jehovah will become a secure refuge for the oppressed, a secure refuge in times of distress. Those knowing your name will trust in you. You will never abandon those seeking you, O Jehovah. You know, that's the way Danny felt, that his Creator will never abandon him. And when we look out in the audience, we look out at the family. Although it's been a real struggle the last few weeks, they have seen these words come true in their case. That their Creator has not abandoned them. Now is the time for us to reflect on Danny's life, the time for us to reflect on our own relationship with our Creator. And as we do that, we will find that that secure refuge encircles us and it protects us. It gives us what's needed to cope with such a tragic loss. And you know, when we look out at the Lichty family, you know, having lost Danny is something that literally rips at the heartstrings. And any one of them will tell you that when they first got the news, that's how they felt. Down in the dumps. You know, people try to console them. An ancient example of Jacob, when he heard that his son was supposedly killed, his son wasn't even dead, but he heard that his son was killed. He ripped his garments apart, and the text says that he was inconsolable. So that is the effect that a tragic loss has on the surviving family members. And so again, we encourage the Lichty family and all in attendance to look to our Creator in times of distress, rely on Him, knowing that death will soon be no more. That brings an end to our memorial service. A song has been selected to close our service, and you have been, no doubt, received a copy of that song. Now on the top there, you'll notice that it's song 139. And as Jehovah's Witnesses, we have a songbook. In the old songbook, that's song 134. So if that's what we're still using, it's song 134. But if you're following along here, it's 139. It carries the theme, see yourself when all is new. Following the song, we'll call on Brother Bill Curtis to close in prayer. So Song 139, if you are able to, let's please stand and join in singing that song. If you can just bear with us a second, we're just going to cue up the song. Just when you think you have all the bases covered, sometimes you miss something. So just bear with us for 1 second. Remember almost everything.
A song in a world that is new. Think how you'll feel, how it will be to live in peace, to be truly free. No evil one will then prevail. No matter God cannot ever fail. The time will have come. All things are new by the rule of your Son. The fullness of our heart overflows in our song. All glory and honor and praise to you belong. See yourself and see me too. And look ahead to a world that is new. No sight we see, no sound we hear. The cause of alarm won't give rise to fear. All has come true, just as he said. Now over mankind his hands is spread. He now the awake and the sleeping in death. Their voices will join us in every grateful breath. To thank you, our God, for all you have done. All things are new by the rule of your Son. The fullness of our heart overflows in our song. All glory and honor and praise to you belong.
Our Heavenly Father, we realize, Jehovah, that this is a time of mourning in the house of mourning, but it's a time for us to, as was mentioned, look at ourselves and look ahead to the future. We have a hope. We have a hope in the resurrection, but we have a hope now of those of us who are alive, of guidance from you. And we know that you care for all of us. You cared for Danny, you cared for all the members of his family, all of us as well, your people serving you around the world. And we know that they need to be aware of this hope as well. So that's an incentive for us, Jehovah, to really be extra diligent in our desire to help others appreciate the wonderful hope that you've given us. So we know that death is certainly an enemy, as your word clearly points out. And we recognize too that this hope of who will be resurrected is not ours to judge. And we're thankful for that, Jehovah, because we know that you have not given us the allowing death. We understand the purpose and why things have remained for the period of time that they have. But we might think too and be angry with ourselves about decisions regarding Danny that we made or that we didn't make, sort of sins of omission. And we might want to blame ourselves and get totally depressed about that, or blame others, either other members of the family, friends, elders, or whoever. But we know the only one who wants us to do that is your enemy, Satan the devil. So we want to have a positive spirit to recognize, just as Danny was imperfect and made mistakes, we and others do as well. And we need your help and your forgiveness. So it's nearly up. And depression and anxieties and pressures like this are becoming more and more common even amongst your people. So we pray that we can be understanding, that we can do what we can to help ourselves, to take responsibility for ourselves, but also to help others. So now, Jehovah, we leave ourselves in your care and keeping. We ask your forgiveness for our mistakes as we forgive others. And we ask these things in Jesus' name. Just a couple of announcements. Again, the Lichty family expresses heartfelt appreciation for everyone who could be here this evening. There are a few refreshments that have been arranged, so if you're able to stay back and have some conversation with the family, that's something that they will welcome. Perhaps they will return just in the front row, and if we can have a line form for those who would like to pass on their condolences. So perhaps if we can have them come from the right side here, my right, and then you can come through and say a word or two to the family members. They express their thanks for all of you who could make it here, as well as those who tied into the live feed.
Is that show? Oh, okay. I just thought I'd pan the whole, whatever you want. Yeah, we'll just get it. Because it's pretty wide angle.
Yeah.